too many entrepreneurs redline for too long, and you need the quiet time. You need the strategic planning time to take the company to the next level. Having top tier salespeople is critical for success. The best salesmen in the world don't need a retainer or a base. They're going to be taken care of with performance.
What one key piece of advice would you like to give to all the entrepreneurs watching and listening today? Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Business Growth Show. I'm your host, Ethan Cassiotis, and today I have a powerful guest. His name is Gregory Kovsky. He is the president and CEO of International Business Associates, IBA, the Pacific Northwest's oldest and largest business brokerage firm, established in 1975. With over 30 years of experience as a mergers and acquisitions intermediary, Gregory has personally facilitated over 300 transactions involving privately held companies and family businesses across multiple states. And his expertise spans manufacturing, distribution, technology, marine, automotive, and service industries, with transactions typically ranging from $1 to $30 million in enterprise value. And as both a seasoned entrepreneur and business sales expert, Gregory's purchased IBA in 2000, and it has grown into a regional leader with 10 offices across Washington and Oregon, completing over 4,400 transactions in the company's 50-year history. And he combines his deep transactional experience with comprehensive real estate expertise, holding broker licenses for over 30 years. And Gregory is also a published author, seminar speaker, and advocate for entrepreneurship, operating on a unique work-life balance philosophy of working 45 weeks per year while maintaining a family-first approach to business. Welcome, Gregory, and thank you for being on the Business Growth Show.
It's a pleasure to be here, Ethan.
Yeah, awesome, mate. I'm sure it's going to be a very impactful episode for everyone watching and listening today. And you are a successful entrepreneur. So for those people who don't know who you are, please introduce yourself by telling us a bit more about you and your journey.
Certainly happy to share it. So I'm a Pacific Northwest boy, grew up in Portland, Oregon. My first love was actually basketball, and went to the University of Texas down in Austin, was a student manager there, studied business, got a degree in accounting and finance, turned down Wall Street to chase my dream of coaching, did that for 4 years. And then I came back to the Pacific Northwest, and IBA had sold my father's veterinary hospital, and he had been impressed with them. And he and I were talking. He said to me, "You're a salesman by personality. You've got an accounting and finance background. I think you'd be good at mergers and acquisitions." So he introduced me to the founder of the company, Bill Osofsky, and it intrigued me. I joined the firm in 94, emerged as one of the top salesmen with the company between 94 and 2000. In 2000, I was offered the opportunity to buy the company from him as one of the top performers. And 26 years later, I'm still at the helm of the company.
Yeah, awesome. What an amazing journey there. I love that. It's like, you learn some business and accounting finance. You did the coaching side, but then, looked at those skills, which is, great all-rounded skills, right? The sales side as well as the numbers side, which are very important both for business to have. And then you got into the M&A space, a very interesting space. And then, you performed well and got the opportunity. I think that's a great succession story, for a business where you're able to sell it to somebody within the business that's doing really well, and well done for you for continuing that over a long period of time, for many decades. It's amazing there for, from 2000 to 2026, having it, yourself there. And well done for all of that. So congrats. I do want to, it's not a mean feat to do that, and well done. So let's talk a bit about going through this journey, and maybe let's talk a little bit about sales first. you mentioned about sales, right? And I think this is the most important skill in business for people to have there, because the business isn't really going to grow. So what do you think are some of the key things in terms of maybe its mindset as well as skills that put you at the top there, right? As you were in that company and now obviously having your own company from there that people can model, that can really get them to be as best as possible at sales.
Certainly, one of my favorite expressions is sales cures all ills. If you can if you can make sales, you can overcome a lot of management errors because you have extra cash flow and profit. If sales are tight, it's a lot harder to navigate on limited resources. So I'm a strong believer, and I run a sales organization, that having top tier salespeople is critical for success. And I believe a top salesperson is worth their weight in gold. And often where entrepreneurs go wrong is not supporting salespeople, because if they are rainmaking, if they are generating revenue, you really shouldn't worry too much about what you're paying them, because they're contributing to the whole. Where I think businesses often get into trouble is they try to replace top performers. And we're just talking about the World Cup. And the hardest thing to get in soccer is goals. Having a top tier striker is critical to win the World Cup. And sales to me are exactly the same. If you put 3 goals on the board, you're probably going to advance. If you put 1 goal on the board, it's going to be nip and tuck to advance. And so I believe that is very applicable when you look at successful sales.
Yeah, I love that. I love the soccer, football analogy as well. The World Cup, where I was there, and it's awesome that we were chatting beforehand that we're at the same game, the Australia versus USA game in Seattle. Even though we didn't get to meet, so that's awesome. And I agree. It's there's a quality element here, right? It's like you talk about the A players. If you get those A players within the organization, that's what's going to get you there. But if you just you want to skimp out and get something that's okay, it's probably not going to get you to where you want to be, in your goals. So I love that analogy there. So a lot of people really want to grow their businesses and I guess sell their business, right? Like, we want to build something over a period of time. And as much as it's great for for cash flow and creating a lifestyle, at some point, people obviously want to exit as well. So what are some tips or things that you've seen about the best businesses that have actually scaled to the point where they can actually sell as well?
So the first thing you want in selling a business is management that works on the business, not in the business. And that is hard for founders because they often are the hub of all activities and they want control. But an evolution to a mature entrepreneur is someone who surrounds themselves with quality people, delegates, trusts but verifies. And if that is the case, you are much more sellable in the marketplace because you're not going to need to perform critical elements. The executive running a hospital is not the one performing the surgeries. And it doesn't matter what the business model is. Elon Musk isn't engineering the rockets that are going to outer space. He is hiring the best, and it allows him to lead that organization. So I believe that's the first thing. I'll pause. If you have a follow-up question, I can continue.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think yeah, being able to, because as a buyer, right? Because I also look at buying businesses, and if the owner is too much in the process, then it's like, what's the transition going to be? Is that going to impact the future of the business? So I think it's so great, and it's hard, I think, from a mindset perspective, because I do, business coaching, mentoring as well, and a lot of people think it's like their baby or something like that, and it's hard for them to let go sometimes. So, but it's actually needed to get to the business to where it's wanted to be. So I love those points. Yeah, please continue some more.
And then the next one in line with that is diversification of risk makes it more saleable. It's not having high customer concentration where 30-40% of your revenue comes from one customer, because if you lose them, the business model is at risk. It's having redundant employees that if one gets hit by a bus or wins the lottery and leaves, that the business can go on, that you're not dependent on one employee any more than the business is dependent on you. It's competing on quality and customer service. You never want to compete on price. That is always a losing game if you're just competing on price. And then understanding your competitive landscape as well. And is there room for growth? Is there looming competition that's going to make your business struggle because someone is building a better mousetrap? All of those things go into valuation, as does clarity of the financial records and the ability for an outside party to assess your systems, your financials, do you have protected intellectual property? There are many elements that go into protecting your space and making the business more attractive on the market.
Yeah, I love that. So many great points there. Let's talk about the timeline here, right? Because I think a lot of people think, I'm just going to call a business broker like yourself, and then within a month or a few months, the business is going to be sold, and that's not necessarily realistically the case, right? In most of the time. So, what should people expect? Or what's the timeline that actually is really needed to get to the point most of the time to be sellable, to get the biggest valuation for your business?
So my company operates on a paid on performance business model. And it's interesting, in the United States, about 21% of the M&A business brokerage firms operate on our model. Most charge retainers and administrative fees to start the process. And I understand why they do it from a cash flow standpoint, but I believe the best salesmen in the world don't need a retainer or a base. They're going to be taken care of with performance. So when you begin to think of selling, both processes, no matter which business model, start with a business valuation. So with our model, we have a vested interest in being honest with you, because we're only going to get paid if we complete a transaction. Now, we do this for free because we want to develop rapport and a relationship. And honestly, we don't care whether you go to market now or in a couple years. We're starting to build a relationship. The other business model, they sometimes, the less scrupulous ones, will give you an answer you want to hear So you're a happy customer when they wrote the first check. So you got to be cautious when getting an assessment of value at what is the core motivation of the party you're getting. But getting to your timeline question, for us, if someone decides they want to go to market, it's generally going to take us 4 to 12 months to sell a business. And then there's usually a transition period after that where you're going to mentor the new owner on how to run the business, which can go from a couple months to a couple years. So, one thing we often coach people is you're 70 years old. It could be 2 years till you're exited from this business. You may want to get that train moving forward because, Father, time doesn't stop and you don't necessarily control health 100%. And you got to have concerns if your spouse has never worked in the business. What happens if you have a stroke or a heart attack to that business? Because without a proper transition, that value can be diminished really quickly.
Yeah. No, I love that. It's I think it's a great model of what you guys have done. It's like, the pay on performance, doing all this sort of stuff. Because it's true. I've heard so many people where they've been told, by this business broker, oh yeah, I'm gonna get you this amount, and then no one wants to pay that, right? And it's a lower amount and it gets them in. So I think, what you guys have done is the fairer option and better for everyone involved, in the way that you structure it, and it's realistic. So I love that part of it there. So let's talk a little bit about valuations now, right? Because I think people need to be aware, because the standard way is doing like an EBITDA, right? Like multiple here that people will know. And depending on the size of your business, depending on the industry, depending on some of these other factors that you talked about just before, will determine that multiple. But there's other ways of obviously valuing a business as well. So I'm curious on, yeah, how are you guys looking at valuing the business? Are you doing any other sort of financial models, or is it sort of a simple, transaction and calculation from there?
So you are correct. The basic valuation formula is EBITDA, which for the unfamiliar is basically the net profit of the company times a multiple. And when people talk multiple, they're talking risk. So, just for your audience, a 4 multiple is a 25% return on investment. So, you divide the 4 into 100, you get the 25%. A 5 multiple would be a 20% return on investment. And a knowledgeable M&A intermediary is assessing the risk of the transfer of ownership, the business model. The basic example I always give is on one side of the spectrum, you have a gas station. And gas station, fuel stations, convenience stores, it's generally location, location, location. It doesn't matter who owns it. So they sometimes will have higher multiples, maybe even 6 or 7, because there's limited risk when you buy that entity. On the other side, you have a hair salon. My wife, beautiful lady who I'm delighted to have been married to 25 years, if her hair salon sold, she wouldn't even give the new owner an opportunity. She would ask one of her girlfriends, who do you go to? Do you trust? Because they would not, my wife would not take the risk with an unknown. Even if it's a beautiful salon with porcelain sinks and all the ambiance you ever want. So those type of businesses may sell at a 2 multiple, a 50% return on investment, because if they're not transitioned correctly, the hairstylist may leave, the customers leave, and you're just left with a location. And so dialing in that multiple takes a lot of knowledge and experience to assess. Now, I've sold hair salons where owners are earning over $1 million a year running the operation. The reward is substantial if you can navigate that transition. So it's all about risk. It's no different than buying a stock that's just gone IPO versus Google or Microsoft that are pretty stable entities as investments. And so the same thing occurs. My background's investment finance and accounting academically. When you look at businesses, it's all assessing risk. And when you talk about other elements, it may get into intellectual property. Do they have patents? Do they have copyrights? Do they have protected space? Maybe they have a domain online that is obvious when people are looking for a product. You know, if you want coffee.com, that would be a pretty good domain to have if you want to sell roasted coffee by direct to consumer online. I mean, people would stumble into that very easily. So those are the type of assets. Then you look also at industries, what is happening in the industry. 5 years ago, SaaS companies were really popular because it's reoccurring revenue, subscriptions. With AI right now, everyone's terrified to buy SaaS companies because we don't know where they are in 3 years. And I call that the speed of entrepreneurship. If you don't modify and adjust, you lose. And I'm sure we both can give examples of businesses that were extremely popular 10 years ago that are non-existent today.
Yeah, definitely. And this is the timing thing, right? Of, like you talked about, knowing what the competitive landscape is, what's going on with technology, and going when's a good time. Because sometimes waiting is not a good thing, right? On that area there, because you can miss a window of opportunity. So I love you talked about the risk elements there. Um, let's talk about due diligence now, right? Because that's really, to my eyes, the next phase, right? Let's say you go in, you do evaluation and go, this is realistic of what the business is at here. Now, if we do these things, before, well, let's understand what your business is about, right? First, let's understand all the nuts and bolts, the systems of everything, and then going, do you work with them and going, hey, if we do these things, it's going to increase your valuation. So let's do that on the journey so we can go there. How do you do because there's I guess your due diligence and then there's the due diligence of the buyers, right? That they will be doing on the company as well. So I'd love to know your thoughts on those sides.
Great question. So let's start with our due diligence. As I said, we offer a free valuation. A common outcome for us is we do the valuation, we explain how the models work, and we let them know if you improve A, B, and C, we can get more money for your business. And because we take a percentage of the sale price, we're willing to wait for them. I mean, our business has been in operation for 51 years, IBA. I've been doing this 32 years. I don't care whether you sell in 26, 27, or 30. I'm going to be here. So I want to do what's right by you. But as you know, with entrepreneurs, it's one thing in theory to say, if I do A, B, and C, I'll improve. If you're not going to execute, then don't fool yourself. And I would say move forward with the sale. On the buyer side in due diligence, and this is an interesting part on the buyer side of valuation. So on one side, you have what I'd call the annuity. It's looking backwards on EBITDA and profitability. But on the other side, you have the appreciation opportunity. If you look at a business and they have 3 locations, we'll say in Sydney, and you think I could take that business model to every major city in Australia and scale this to 50 locations over the next 5 years, then what you actually bought the business for almost becomes irrelevant, because your acquisition price was low given where you can go. I'll give you an Australian example that you may know that I've been involved with in the United States. I sold a Pertec location in the United States, which was born in Australia, which repairs and replaces hydraulic hoses and construction equipment and on boats and different things. Well, today, there are many more Pertec locations in the United States than there was when I sold the location here in Seattle for the one who brought the business model to Seattle. And they recognized with the franchise, which is another acquisition area, that maybe someone has developed a business model and done the experimentation, and now you can buy a master territory or a developer relationship to take that business model to multiple locations. I actually, at IBA, one of our divisions is franchise sales, where I have 2 brokers who can sell franchise business models. They're not established, but it's the opportunity in the territory.
Yeah, cool. Love that. And yeah, very interesting on yeah, both sides of that coin where you've got the past, the annuity side, but also the appreciation, the opportunity side there of what we're looking at with the buyers and the due diligence and obviously what that's valued at, right? And then I guess it comes down to negotiating then at the same time, at that point, yeah, because it's like there's price and terms a lot of the time here. And you want to maybe talk a little bit around that, Gregory, around, is the owner, do they want a price? There's different types of terms on how they do. What are you seeing in terms of the transactions and how that's working and how they're being structured?
Certainly, there are 4 primary components of financial negotiations. And it's not a one size fits all. You got to look at the situation. So everyone knows cash. No risk for a seller in cash. It's clean. But it's also the hardest commodity to have at scale. So you can supplement it with a loan or investment, but it is a difficult commodity to accumulate and attractive in transactions. The next one is seller financing. So if you don't go to a bank, sometimes you can go to the seller and have them finance a portion of the transaction, which can allow for a more rapid transaction than having to go through a bank. The seller knows the business, so they're taking a risk. Maybe there's the same collateral from the borrower, real estate or something securing their note. So that can be a piece. Then you kind of get into the fun pieces, which could be an earnout or a variable component. And I have seen situations where that is necessary because let's take the conservative side. Let's say 30% of revenue is from one customer. You may want a variable piece contingent on retaining that customer, that you're going to look back in 1, 2, 3 years and see if that customer's still there, and then the seller gets a bonus. On the other side, maybe the business is in a growth curve, and that's a way to build in upside for the seller to say, yes, in 2026, it did this amount of revenue, but we should grow 40% in 27. And that's when you're going to own it as the owner of the business. And I would like a piece of that, because you basically did nothing to get where we are in 27. I laid all the groundwork for that achievement. You're not going to really adjust the helm of the ship probably till 28 or 29 with all the momentum and contracts and everything I've put in place. So that's a variable piece. And then the final one, which I've seen benefit founder owners, is to retain equity. Sometimes you would sell off, let's say, 70% of your business. And let's say you sold a business for $10 million and you retained $3 million in equity. Well, if you bet on the right racehorse and they grow the business, now if it's worth 30 million in 5 years when you get paid out, now maybe you're getting almost as much or more than you got in cash at closing for keeping chips on the table. And so you really got to assess your buyer. It's a little like betting on a racehorse, in that, do you want to go conservative and take the sell now cash price? Or do you maybe want to bet on someone with upside potential and roll some of your chips with the company?
Yeah, I love that. So awesome. You simplified it with the cash, the seller financing, the earn out variable. I love that. The up and down, both of those, and then the retaining equity. I'm curious on the equity part, right? So let's say it's a small portion, whether it's 10% or whatever, that people roll in and they're hoping for another exit maybe down the line, or just, great dividends and things as that happens. Do you normally find that the owners are still involved to some extent, like whether it's like in a board element or something like that, or they're just more passive and just allowing it to sort of ride if they're leaving the equity in the business?
It's a case by case situation. A smart buyer will keep them engaged. And I've seen sellers stay for as long as 6 years in active involvement if they can do what they enjoy. The one I'm thinking of was a company called Lanks Industries. They manufactured product in the nuclear industry. And the owner who I represented loved the sales aspect of the business, but he didn't want all the management elements. And so the new owner created a position for him where he could do exactly what he wanted. In fact, we negotiated, I believe, 7 weeks of vacation time. So as long as he had the freedom to do that, when he was home, he still loved his company and doing what he was doing, but he was able to give up everything he didn't like doing and also take significant chips off the table.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love that. Great way to transition and sort of win-win for everybody there. You talked about having 7 weeks off a year, and I know for you, you enjoy working 45 weeks per year and having like a family first approach to what you do. So tell us a bit more about this of a, what do you call it, a sustainable work-life balance, right? As a business owner, and how you set your life up to enjoy it.
Certainly, I believe the best salespeople, getting back where we started, need to get out of the game and recharge. And so that's where I created that long ago for myself, where every 100 days, I was taking about a week off at the start to just recharge my battery, to get out of the game, to clear my mind. And I found that it made me more productive. And I think too many entrepreneurs redline for too long. And you need the quiet time, you need the strategic planning time to take the company to the next level. And so, myself, I have grown to 7 weeks where we talked before I came on. Sydney's behind you, where we spent 3 weeks one Christmas holiday season down under exploring Australia and had the time of our life. And I believe with my kids, I have a son and daughter. When I get them out of their routines, um, I get quality time with them and my wife as well. Is they don't have their friends, they don't have their sports, they don't have their lives. So they actually open up and you get to know them better as people.
Yeah, I love that. So awesome. I love that bit at the end there where you said, yeah, getting people, your family out of their environment and then you can really connect, on those levels and then create some amazing experiences like, down in Australia or wherever you're traveling around the world. I think that's a really powerful thing that people I think they should think about here is how can you do that to really connect and give yourself that environment to do that. And also, yeah, do it throughout the year, right? Like don't just do it every now and then. Make sure you're having these moments, and they could be long moments of 3 weeks, or they could be short moments. It could be like a weekend or a long weekend, right? That you get these as well throughout the time there. It doesn't have to be big ones. Would that be right?
It's true. And I also think I'm a big experience person. Ideas can come from all corners for entrepreneurs. So putting yourselves in new environments, reading new things, listening to new podcasts, that can spark an idea which can germinate into a wonderful modification to a business model or a new business model entirely. It's it's fascinating. I will tell you one. I haven't executed on this, but a business model I loved. I took my family to Cambodia a few years ago, and we went to Angkor Wat, and we're staying in Siem Reap, and we went to a restaurant there where 100% of the staff was children and young adults, where they taught them the hospitality business from the chefs to the waiters to the hostesses. And they had created a business model of a combination school restaurant, which had exceptional food, where they were training these people to maybe open their own restaurant on the line or go work in other restaurants from this school environment. And you went into this restaurant knowing that these were kids, that they were experimenting and learning. But to me, it was just such a wholesome, wonderful environment because they were trying so hard in a practical education environment.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And I think that's probably the gap, right? Where a lot of universities or places where you study can just be theory, right? But actually doing something, doing projects, actually going out there. I remember in my MBA, they paid the university for us to go into an actual business and improve it. We had coaches and mentors and we did that whole thing, right? One thing is learning about how to do that. Another thing is actually getting in there, getting your hands dirty and doing it. So I think that's an amazing concept. And how can we do that more with people? How can we immerse them in that and giving them the chance to try and fail or have challenges and keep moving forward, right? And that mindset side of there, which is amazing. So I love that little concept. I'll have to go check it out at some point soon. There, it sounds really cool. And yeah, Gregory, you said so much gold with us here today. around how it works with sales and what we be thinking about, and also about ourselves. I think is important, right? About how we're replenishing ourselves, our energy, to get ideas, to spend time with our family, what's important for us, to enjoy our life along the journey. And I guess as we're starting to wrap up here today, what one key piece of advice would you like to give to all the entrepreneurs watching and listening today?
I would say be risk acceptant. Um, One of my favorite expressions is to discover new lands, you have to push away from shore. And people get caught up in their routines, their comfort zones. But if you're unwilling to take risks, you're never going to know what is possible. And it doesn't matter what entrepreneur you research, all of them have had failure points in their lives. But it's what you learn from that adversity that creates the next big thing. And I think people need to be comfortable with failure. I know both of us have an athletic background, and I believe athletics teach so many things. I used it with my kids and myself in my life. It teaches you teamwork, it teaches you competition, it teaches you hard work, it teaches you life's not fair. I mean, those things happen in athletics, and I believe entrepreneurship is the ultimate competitive sport because it's unforgiving. You are going to fail. You're going to do everything right, and something is going to happen that causes you a nightmare. And it's how do you respond to that? How do you learn from that?
Yeah, definitely, completely agree. The similarities of athletic sports and entrepreneur being the biggest competitive one. I love that, and just keep bouncing back. I do the analogy of like Rocky, the movies, right? You see Rocky, he keeps getting hit, but he keeps getting back up, right, in the ring, and he wins in the end. So I think that's the thing. It's being able to take the hits, being able to keep getting back up, and move forward to what you want to achieve. So love that, Gregory. So awesome. And yeah, we connected through our networks. I learned about your awesome journey to having over 30 years of experience in mergers, acquisitions, sales, and having personally facilitated over 300 transactions, which is massive. You're awesome guys, so knowledgeable, and you really laid it out quite simply here, which I loved. Of what's important, and also getting the right people on your team, in here, because you don't know what you don't know, and from increasing those valuations, those multiples can be massive, right? And how you structure that, in what that does for your transition and what you want to move forward to in your business, of what you've been working for over that long period of time. So I love, and all those personal elements that you talked about too there. So you're an awesome guy, and I'm sure you continue to help privately held companies and family businesses across multiple states to scale and sell. Very grateful that we connected, and look forward to partnering as well. So Gregory, how can people find you and get in contact with you?
The easiest way to connect with me is through our website, which is ibainc.com. So ice cream boy apple, ice cream Nancy Charlie.com. I may direct people on that to our blog. We have a very robust blog that's published several times a week, has had about 200 guest authors in its history, where you can learn an immense amount about entrepreneurship and buying and selling businesses. Also, we have a video page there where podcasts like this are shared. I believe the best decisions are made from a foundation of knowledge, and podcasts like yours, Ethan, are honestly where knowledge is being shared today. The heritage media, people are not watching television, but people on a long car ride, bike ride, walk will absorb a podcast and get themselves thinking, and it allows for a deeper dive into subjects. And I think that's going to be very valuable moving forward for people that you basically can, in our case here, crowdsource the world to share ideas, where an idea from Seattle could be listened to by someone on Hamilton Island, and they decide, I'm going to do something based on listening to Ethan's podcast.
Yeah, awesome. I love it. And yeah, it's awesome to, to have you on here. And I think it is a great medium, right, for everybody. And whether you want to host a podcast like myself or just be on a podcast and be interviewed like Gregory, right? Because I think we've all got things to share and always be learning, it's from other people, because you never know what that one idea from today of what Gregory talked about here could be that thing that sparks you to go, hey, I want to do this, or let's delve into this further. So yeah, definitely check out the website there, and that blog and all those resources, and the videos and the podcasts that are on there, because I'm sure there's a lot of gold that you can go even deeper and check that all out. Mate, Gregory, it's been a pleasure interviewing you, and thanks for being on the Business Growth Show.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching and listening to the Business Growth Show, where we talk about everything on business growth. And please like, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as Ethan Cassiotis, or visit my website, ethancassiotis.com. And if you want to grow and scale your business, you'd reach out to me on any platform to see if we're a good fit. So until next time, remember that our business grows where we learn skills and take action using them in spite of fear. So let's create wealth and freedom together.